people connect with people, the stories behind the firm and the leader, I mean, that is really what builds trust. Telling a story that really connects with somebody is important now because there's so much noise out there that we're filtering out all the time.
Well, very excited for the podcast today. We have Julia Bonner Zade on. Welcome, Julia.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so Julia is founder of Pierce and an expert in public relations. And I was thinking back. We're pretty much almost 7 years of the podcast, and I don't think I've had anyone in PR. So I'm really glad that Hannah made the introduction, and excited to have you on for our audience today.
Oh man, I'm honored. I hope I can do all of my PR colleagues justice in representing the field podcast. Thanks so much.
Well, what I love about your aspect too, I know you specialize in architecture, engineering, and construction PR, which is unique because I think a lot of us get pitched from different PR companies, and not that we're totally unique. I mean, there is overlap in business, but there is a unique aspect, right, to the design architecture community as well as construction as opposed to other industries.
Yeah, and I think even in the world today, our field is it's such different conversations that we're having. So on the one hand, PR for the industry specialize in, like you said, architecture, engineering, construction is really important. There's a lot of competition. It is a really tight and competitive labor market in that industry. So having a proactive, brand presence, point of view, authority in your space really matters. But also, Brad, and this may apply to other firms that come on the show and leaders, is interesting change in technology with, of course, AI search really dominating how most people finding resources. AI search now prioritizes third-party links like media stories to determine who really is the authority online. So what we do, there's always been this case anecdotally for it's important to tell your story, but also now just the way the technology has impacted search and how companies are found, it is becoming more important to have some kind of strategy because that's what's pointing back to you as the authority online.
It's funny because I think to some it could be overwhelming. I mean, that's why you're here, Julia, right? They just reached out to you. But I love this intro because, so many of us have heard for a long time, right? There's another way to build your brand, to build your voice. Like this is social media, this is your website, this is, YouTube, podcasts. I mean, all these different aspects. But I've seen that, through the AI, even Google's on the AI or ChatGPT as they're searching this. How hard is it though, when you're working with smaller businesses? Because I'm sure a lot of the pushback you would get is like, I'm busy, Julia, like I don't have time. I have a lot going on. I mean, the reality is, a lot of us are putting out fires on a daily, regular basis. And so, how do you start with them to figure out, okay, well, let's find something palatable that we can do that would actually help with, creating some authority in your space?
Well, it really is a quality over quantity game. We want to be really thoughtful about what we do for our clients. And I think that would be true for anybody. You need to think about PR and think, I've got to go do everything under the sun. And the truth is too, a lot of times because now there are so many niche publications and industry like your targets on where you might spend time, podcasts are a great example. But it might be a medium that's not, you don't have to think about like the New York Times as being target one, and that might not be impactful for who you're even trying to reach. For a lot of our clients, it's the industry publications that really speak to their decision makers in the hospital world or in schools and that, those opportunities are really worthwhile. But it doesn't have to mean national media, starting in this really grandiose place. Like it is very targeted, thoughtful.
I love you share that because, early on, at least in my career, I mean, you assume or you hear the word PR and that's what you're thinking, like covering New York Times. I want to be nationally published, right? Maybe it's a speaking engagement, right? I mean, there's a lot of different things. And some people are like, do I have the portfolio to be on the cover of a magazine to be published? Do I have the depth of work? Do I have the public speaking skills? For those, from a softer landing, I know social media has changed this. What are some of those things that you have worked with your clientele to be like, no, let's start here. Let's start here. These are things we should focus on right now.
Yeah. And you're exactly right. I think it used to be like the big publication names were the target. And now because everyone's attention span is so small. There's social media, all those things. Even if you get in the New York Times, we tell clients, like, don't assume somebody's going to see it. It used to be that everyone read the hard copy. It's like, that's not even true anymore. So it really is also about how you use the, places where you have coverage and make sure it gets to the people that matter. Because this world today, like, you can't assume just because you get a great story, and that means anywhere that somebody's going to see it. But I think to answer your question, it really is about, we start with defining who do you actually care to reach? And based on the goals of the firm or the leader, that helps us understand really from a strategic standpoint, now where can we go? It might be podcasts, it might be some industry publications, maybe it's local business media, but it's, Fast Company, Wall Street Journal, those may not be first to bat, which is fine. And oftentimes for small businesses, that's not really where they need to be anyway. So it really is about, what are the goals? Who is really the target for what you are doing, selling, communicating? And then how do we put those pieces together to make it work, and create ROI?
And it's interesting. I'd imagine, from our point of view, from me as your client, looking at, okay, how could Julia come in and, strategize with me? What about your perspective? I think one thing we speak about a lot on the podcast is how we vet clients. How can we find better clients? How do we find the ideal client? Someone that lines up with who we are as a business. For you, I'd imagine there's some truth there too. Not everyone who calls you is a client for you, Julia. So what are you looking for in it? It may not be size, but it could be a story to tell. I mean, what are key points you're looking at? Does the firm have to be established? I mean, maybe understanding your perspective of what you're looking for ideal client, it kind of helps us position ourselves to know if we're ready for PR and like how that could, explode our business.
Yeah, I would say you're not ready for PR if you're not ready to be visible or share a perspective, have something meaningful to say. And what I mean by that is not, one thing that a client said last year when we were asked by a reporter if this particular client could share trends, like, what are your biggest trends for 2027? Or what are the three things you think are going to happen and define the market? And he said, I don't know. I don't really want to be wrong. So I don't talk to her about that, because if I'm not right, I put all these options out there, it could end up reflecting poorly. And what we said to him was, no one has a crystal ball, right? But she's asking you because you have this big seat in the industry, in the market, to share based on what you know and your experience. What do you think? And it's not, you have to be 100% correct all the time, but people are looking to industry leaders, business leaders for, their point of view to help them make smarter business decisions for themselves. And if you aren't comfortable saying anything, it's just, there's very little that a firm like ours can do. And it really should be, I would never tell you, Brad, what your opinion should be,
Mm-hmm.
Tell me what you think. And I say, well, here are some things to consider, how we might refine that to really let it resonate, make it resonate based on the opportunity. But it is our client thinking that we are bringing forward. And it's really important now, especially with all the ChatGPT content and all the things like that, you have a point of view. And so I think really not being willing, not being comfortable to grow or build that skill set, like a kind of a non-starter for us, because you're not really set up for success on either side.
I actually love that because, as I was listening to you speak about that, I mean, my interpretation would be, it doesn't so much matter years of business. I mean, whether I'm 1 year in business, 20 years in business, but even if I'm 1 year in business, I may have had 20 years of experience in my field, working and studying and learning. And so your point is, it's really the confidence of, different speaking points, different topics, different things that are relatable to your ideal client that you're trying to attract. And if you have confidence in that, that's really the base of what you're looking for, and you can build from that.
That's right. And a good firm is going to help prepare you too. So here are some things. We are always reading our trade publications. So yes, we want the client's perspective, and it should be additive and collaborative. Like, okay, well, what about if you get asked about this, that kind of thing. So you don't have to know everything, but if you are getting asked, you have the opportunity. It's for a reason. And like you said, you don't have to have X number of years in the role, X number of years in the field. I think that's part of the bill is you're creating that authority as you pursue and participate in opportunities like that from a media standpoint.
I love to prepare you. I'd be curious, from your expertise, I'd imagine you have some good case studies or some clients that have been, taking that, I don't want to say criticism, but taking that advice and built it, because a lot of people that I converse with are like, well, standing in front of people, I'm not confident. Getting behind a podcast, I'm not comfortable, right? It's like nerve wracking for the first time. Doing a selfie video, like an Instagram story, could be very, a lot of trepidation for somebody. And so I would imagine that, yeah, there's ways, if you're an expert, that you can build the brand without having to do a selfie video. And I'm sure you could speak to that. But how have you seen someone that maybe shy in front of the camera, as you said, prepare them, help them build them up so that they are ready to, take on maybe some of these different platforms?
Gosh, so many different things. For some clients, if they've never had media opportunity before, and that's something that we're working on with them, there may be a full-on media training we do on the outset. It's,
Mhm.
because you talk to people, leaders all the time. It's like, it's not even what you say, it's how you move, your hands, like how you use your hands, how you
Mm.
put your voice, how you, like sometimes, especially like people, their body language changes their tone of voice and they get really quiet or whatever that might be. So there's like the soft skills part of it where just making sure that somebody feels confident to deliver a message is one thing. And I would say it's not always intuitive. Like most great speakers have been coached because you don't wake up just knowing how to go present or deliver a message, or from day one. And on the other side of it, it really is the preparation. One of my favorite things to really talk to clients about is there are so many techniques when you go into an interview to really keep it on message with what you want to say and the things that are really important to the business or important to you as the leader to get across. And without preparation, what we see happen, or people will say if they've had prior experiences or done things on their own, is like it kind of went all over the place. But it doesn't have to be that way. If you're prepared and you know how to get from a question to the sort of what you're looking to deliver, there are so many techniques and ways that you can do that and do it with confidence and in a way that does get to the reporter's question or whatever, whoever it might be, and really deliver what is important to you. So it's kind of depends on where somebody started, what their experience level is. But I think the training, the coaching, it is important, and leaders should embrace that because it's only going to make them better. Yeah, and it's just not an intuitive skill necessarily.
Oh, I love that, because I think, to your point, there's two parts of it. And I've seen this. I wish I had this knowledge before, like a long time ago, Julian. It's funny, when I was in college, I did like a public speaking class, and it was like nerve wracking. I don't know what it is when, like now, I go public speak and I don't, get nervous, but you're to your point, you're prepared for it. In college, it was funny because you'd be sitting in a room and the teacher would be like, "Who wants to go first?" So you're kind of like, "Do I go? Does someone else?" And so you have this anxiety building up, like, should I just get up and get this over with? Which kind of adds to it. But I think one thing that I should get training on is, as you talk about use of hands and posture and these different things, which do help build confidence. But more importantly, the preparation I thought was interesting, because yeah, you can do some of these, call them add-ons, but to your point, do you know the content? Do you know, you know what you're speaking about? And if you've prepared, if maybe you've rehearsed it and practiced it, and you know the knowledge deep down, you're passionate about it. It's a lot easier to stand with confidence and speak in front of someone, if you've prepared.
Oh my gosh. No doubt about it. And I think, there's preparation. There's some clients we do will record them if it's an in-person show, play back the video. Like even seeing yourself can be
So
just game changing in how you're delivering because we don't often get that opportunity. So it really is, it cannot be overstated. Like the preparation really matters. It's going to make you feel more confident and also make you feel like I know how to answer whatever question might be thrown at me and avoid some of the things, Brad, that we see are like, have you ever read a media story where it's like, we tried to reach the executive and they said no comment. And it's like, oh, well, like, golly, you shouldn't have done that. But if you know what you want to say and they say anything you want to add, like you've got something right there where if you don't just know how to navigate some of those things, it may end up reflecting not the way that you want it to, but it's just like, how do you do that? And I think those are the skills that a firm like ours, and we really prioritize making sure our clients are equipped with, because it does matter. And when you see it in Frank, you're like, oh, I'm glad I I knew how to navigate that, or I didn't just say no comment, nope, like nothing to add, because it just you can look at, and that's not necessarily what you're trying to convey. It's just
Mhm.
you're not thinking about it that way. So,
How important is storytelling?
oh, so important, and I don't say it. Of course, I'm biased. I work in this field, and telling stories is really what we do. But the truth is, like, people connect with people, and the stories behind, the firm and the leader. I mean, that is really what builds trust. And so we're always looking for what really is the story that will resonate. What do we have to support that story in terms of impact, data, outcomes, things like that. But I think in today's world, again, with just how crowded and noisy it can become, is telling a story that really connects with somebody is important now because there's so much noise out there that we're filtering out all the time. And so having a point of view, having a story to tell, I think is like to me more important now in the age, especially of AI, than it ever has been.
See, I love that because I know one of your, expert, I don't want to say topics, but one of the focuses of the firm, is how that relational intelligence. That was something that as we were prepared for this. You speak about relational intelligence and how that's a competitive advantage. You know, building on the storytelling. What is that relational intelligence, and why is this so applicable in the market of construction, design, architecture? In these fields.
Well, I mean, not unique to this industry, but it is so relationship driven. And, if people are choosing who they want to do these long-term projects with based on relationships, having a compelling story to tell and a way to connect with people is just critical. There is also a challenge when, over the last 2 years, I would say we're based in Nashville, but we work with clients all over the country. Is here, there's a lot of development going on. The city has grown a whole lot. And the challenge, again, that's not unique to Nashville, but is it's kind of a sea of sameness. There are a lot of national, global players coming in, setting up offices here. You're going to compete for projects. And so it's like, well, they're all saying we care about relationships. We're a full service firm. We're award winning. And it's like, well, everybody's saying that. So what are you really competing in, to have to differentiate and competing in? And I think stories and that positioning, the point of view really helps create differentiation, especially in these competitive markets. And in times where, like now, there's economic uncertainty, there's the labor shortage or talent, there's a lot of talk around talent and competition for talent. That's how people are going to connect to you. And so very important and something that truly is driving clients to us now is how do we tell a story that's different than all these other people around us that's just very proud of life.
It's interesting because so much of, not so much of PR, but so much what that we associate with PR is the business development arm, right? And how can we have more exposure? How can we be a thought leader? But you touched on a few points here, Julia. I mean, you mentioned you're in a competitive space. We know about labor shortage, um, company culture, right? These are things that attract people. So not just attracting maybe the end customer and the ideal client, but maybe you're attracting great talent to come to your organization and stay in a market that is really tough. Like one of the common themes is not enough good people, not enough trained people. I mean, how many businesses, not just construction, but every business owner is like, I don't have good people. Like, the younger generations change, like they're not focused, they don't care. But to your point, if you're building a story where people are like aspiring to be there, how does that change the dynamic of a firm and company by being able to broadcast that culture or, attract that labor?
It's a huge part of it. It's a huge part of it. And that is, I mean, again, it's not necessarily unique to the industry that we serve, but there is this talent, there's this just tremendous change in how companies are attracting talent, trying to win top talent, and having a story that people connect to, or a way that they can see, oh, I have a sense of what it's actually like to go and work there, is helpful for sure. And the other thing I would say now, because of LinkedIn and some of the platforms with like media and some of the things that we do, people have an opportunity to view and get an experience of leadership before they're ever working for that leader. So one of the things that we talk about with our clients is, how are you showing up online? Because a lot of times, and especially younger team members, they want to know who they're working for and what they stand for. They will go looking people up. And so it's like, well, what are you sharing? And you can't just have these dead profiles anymore. A lot of our clients, it's like, we know we don't need to be on LinkedIn, but we don't really want to be the one doing it, coming up with the idea. You help a lot with that because it's like, it's fair, it takes time and it's kind of one more thing to do on a very busy, in a very busy season. But it's important. You can't ignore it because that's where talent is. That's where clients are. That's where project partners are. I mean, it's just one of those things where it's like, yeah, it might be inconvenient, but you have to have a way to figure out how to have a presence there that's meaningful, not generic, because it matters. People are going to look you up. People are going to come find you. And that is one of the ways that, especially when you talk about talent attraction, one of the things they're doing to figure out who they're going to go work for. And it helps them make the decision for themselves.
It's funny you say that. I feel like I've been beating the drum on LinkedIn forever. And everyone gives me a hard time. They're like, Brad talks about LinkedIn forever. But the reality is that demographic's unique because, a lot of my clients, they're not on Instagram. They may not be on Pinterest. They may not be on, some TikTok for sure, right? Whereas they are on LinkedIn. And so same as some of these employees, and a lot of people just assume LinkedIn is just like a, resume and, but there's a lot more to, the demographic on that. How has LinkedIn played a role? I mean, from your firm coming in, I would imagine that a lot of business owners probably don't know how to use LinkedIn. They're not familiar. How has your team been able to, not just for LinkedIn, but other platforms, to become an expert in how these, of course, algorithms change, but, how these platforms are changing, but how you can now use that knowledge to help, build a voice for your clients?
Well, LinkedIn, I agree with you. I think it's a really important place. It's actually one of the main platform we focus on. And of course, we're kind of the more in the world, so it makes sense. But what we do when we have an executive whose page we support or manage is one of the questions we did a lot, or kind of pain points when we start working with somebody new, is I don't know exactly what to post, and I don't want to be posting nonsense.
Yes.
It's like you don't want to just posting suddenly because you've been told to post. And so it really is, okay, what are the themes and the topics that really are important to you, where you feel like you have a perspective to share, that you're comfortable sharing? A lot of times it is on culture, because they should be the, champion of what culture, what a good team member looks like, celebrating their team, maybe big wins from the firm, whatever that might look like, industry trends. So we'll work with them to define, what are those pillars, so it doesn't feel like you're just posting out there about whatever you see on the platform. And then also, what's your point of view on that? So we're making sure that those dots connect. And then, Brad, back to kind of what we were talking about earlier with media, it really is quality over quantity. We don't tell any of our executives, go post every day. But when there are times where it's important to post and to share, and to do that. And it is important because people see it. And a lot of firms and businesses have company pages on LinkedIn. But the truth is, you talked about metrics and engagement. People connect with people.
Yes.
And so if they're sharing something, it makes a way bigger impact than if a company page is sharing something. And so we really try to make sure that they understand that. Like, it's not just, we have a company page, we don't need to worry about posting as CEO or CEO or whoever it might be. It's like, people are connecting with you. The company is an entity, So really trying to shift what they think might be true about LinkedIn to, this is really practically how it works, why it matters, how people are, how it's showing up to people that you want to reach. And I think then they can't really ignore it. It's important place to be.
I love that you share that because whenever I speak to people, of course, I have an AFT construction, a Finer Touch Construction LinkedIn page. I never post on that. I post on Brad Leavitt. And I've been telling people, I'm like, when I'm posting on Instagram or TikTok or Facebook, I mean, it's fine. AFT construction is fine. And, people are following a lot of the content, but on LinkedIn, it's so much more personable when it's me. And, and so I completely agree with that comment, because that's how people are connecting with people, as you said. And really the quality thing, I love that you touched on that, because this is where it can be overwhelming for some of us, is like, I don't have a ton of projects. I don't have a ton of content, but it's like, well, let's strategize with the content you have. And maybe you're not posting every day. Maybe it's once a week, but it's really comes down to consistency.
Consistency over time is the name of the game. I mean, you can't, I think what, is always painful for us to see is you can tell really clearly when somebody like tried to go start posting and then they got off onto something else that you were talking about. You get OD and it dies. I was just in a meeting yesterday with an executive who said, yeah, I got on this big kick. Like, I want to go start posting on LinkedIn. He told his marketing team, like, here are the things I want to talk about. And it's like, and then he got uh, two big project wins that I needed to focus on. I haven't posted. And it's like, like you get it, but you have to have a way to functionally operationalize that or it's just going to die. And in some ways, it's almost worse. You try, it's really clear on, when you get online that like didn't get executed the way that it was intended. So yeah, I mean, finding the right resource to make sure you do feel like you can keep the people because it's important. And again, it doesn't have to be every day. It just has to be regular enough where you feel like there is value to what you're sharing. You're not just out there, pat yourself on the back. Like it's something of value and relevance. And that it is periodically at least consistent enough that it starts to resonate with people. People associate Brad's content with Brad. It's just not disparate noise on the internet.
Think back to your early days of Pierce, starting. How was it for you starting, as a business owner in those early versions of Pierce?
Oh my goodness. Well, in some ways it feels like yesterday, and in other times I'm like, that feels like 200 years ago, Brad. Remember that? But it was a different world. So I mentioned that we're based in Nashville, and I think the market here was just a lot. We had before COVID, Amazon came and opened up a big office. And that's really, things started changing. And so I think it has been interesting because in the early days of Pierce PR, we were doing a lot of local work. We do a lot more national now because a lot of stuff in Nashville is like, connected to many other places. And so it really has been that shift. And then I would also say one of the biggest things when I think about the early days is the technology was so different. And it's something that I think in many ways has made our kind of work more valuable. The AI, people are like, oh, well, we can go do a press release with ChatGPT. And it's like, I dare you to send that to your reporter. Like they know, and they will, know what AI generated content looks like. And so we talk a lot more now about making it authentic to a client voice. And there are ways that AI, I think, enhances our work, no doubt, but you can't just be creating stuff with AI. And what didn't even exist. The people weren't even thinking like that early days, And so it's just, I think the market has changed a lot, which is great. I think we've grown a lot and been able to take advantage of that. And I would say the other big thing, at least that comes to mind right away, is the technology has informed our field a lot, but also made it more important to really have a strategy. Like you can't just rely on AI to do your PR for you.
I love that you shared that because every business has to learn how to evolve, right? And Mark Liberté, who is a public speaker, he has a quote from Ford, and it's like, if you don't like change, you're going to like being irrelevant a lot less, right? And so, the point being is everything's changing. And if you don't adapt, but it's hard, like change is hard. I mean, I would imagine, here on the podcast, you could say, well, we've had to adapt, how did you implement that change? Because sometimes it may be easier for you, Julia, but maybe some of your employees, it's harder. They may be more resistant. I come from a construction background, and it's, hey, Brad, I've been doing it this way for 20 years, right? That's a common thing. And so you're kind of fighting just the human nature of us to not want to adapt to a new environment.
Yeah, I think honestly, it is one of those things like as a leader of any firm, you got to be open to change. Because like you said, it's can be the death of you if you decide to resist it, depending on what it is. One of the things I think that has helped tremendously is I always say, I want to work with people smarter than me all the time. I don't want to be the person who thinks I know everything about change and how AI or technology can impact our business. And so having kind of a peer group of other, not just people in PR, but business leaders who I can talk to and make sure that we have candid conversation about what's changing in our business. I mean, even everything from used to be in office, and now we talk to our employees every year about do they want to be in a changing to meet where your talent is, where the market is. And I think a lot of that is you got to be willing to ask and sometimes be wrong. And also, I think like surround yourself with smart people who have good opinions that can challenge yours. And you don't have to, necessarily buy into what they're sharing. But I think it's always about like um, taking that thinking and figuring out, is it relevant or how is it relevant to you and your firm? And so we try to do a lot of that, especially because we do have younger employees who are now way more like they're creating GPTs for things that, I mean, I don't, that's not something I'm sitting around and doing, but they were growing up in a different environment. And so really, I think just embracing what is coming and figuring out what parts of it make sense for you, in terms of that change, because it's not everything, but you can't say none of it either.
Yeah, I love that because you made the comment that you're going to hire and surround yourself with people, and it takes a lot of confidence to do that, right? Because some people have a hard time thinking, well, what if they think that I'm not qualified to be in the position or be the owner or be their boss? The criticism. But whereas you have other talents, running a company takes a lot of different aspects that you may have not thought about. What have you learned from your leadership growth just as you've grown the company and progressed with your clientele and the team members and expansion?
The biggest, I think, thing has been, really bringing in people as we have grown that I can truly like delegate and go handle things. And, I know some business owners being an entrepreneur, like I didn't get into owning a PR firm because I was looking at P&Ls all day long. It was because I like to storytell and I like to write and all of these things. And so as we've grown, we've needed people with more sophisticated skill sets than me to come in and lead those functional areas. And I think some of that just has come with time and the ability to do it, but also recognizing, hey, I'm not the best person. I shouldn't know everything. I shouldn't consider myself the expert in everything. And so being willing and vulnerable, and I think to acknowledge that and say, what is the right resource we need? At what level do we need it? And then, how do we go get it? Is just been super important to helping me grow, our company grow. And I think just figuring that out over time of like the timing of that, and the needs of the business have changed. So I would say that's been the biggest thing. And again, it's not like intuitive. No one tells you year 2, you go hire a CFO. Year 3, so you've got to figure it out, ask good questions, talk to people, and also recognize where your limits are. And then that gets me really excited because when we have somebody good who knows more than I do, I'm like, our business is going to be better because of this. Because I didn't like that wasn't information or like expertise that I inherited. So I think that will probably one of the biggest things.
What was there a tipping point? I don't want to say big break because there's always a lot of progress in any business and a lot of milestones. When did you feel like, hey, I feel like we're making strides as a business. We're prepared for growth. Maybe there's a signature project when you're like, okay, Pierce is going to be something great. It's always hard to see how great you're going to be from day one, but at some point you kind of are like, okay, I think we got our rhythm.
The answer for us would be that we went from being positioned more broadly as a B2B, a firm that served B2B clients, to a firm that really focused on the built environment. And that's what we say. It's our passion. It is our biggest body of expertise. It is how we know how to work the best and create value for our client. And I think that pivot for any business, when you niche down and narrow your focus, can be terrifying because you're saying no to other things. And for us, not all of our clients who did that were in the built environment. But what it has done has created a clear position for us, a clear why clients come to us. They know we understand their pain points and challenges. They know we understand the industry. And it has allowed us to grow, at a more accelerated pace because we're not focused on 100 things. B2B is also looking out at the ocean. Not right. That thorough. So really saying, this is who we serve, this is what we know, and this is where we create value. And I would say, it was hard. We had some of our employees say like, well, what about these clients that we've worked with for a long time? When we go out and say that and update all of our materials and how we talk about ourselves, like, what does that mean for that? And it was true. I mean, it's a fair question, but it's like, we're not going to grow by being everything to everyone.
Mhm.
It was I think a difficult pivot, but certainly the right one, and has been a major accelerant to our.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to get to the point, and I think that's maturity in business, and maybe not in years, but just in running your business. Is so many of us try to chase every project, or it's that shiny object syndrome, and sometimes we like to hunt, right? Like you're probably competitive to some extent, Julia, like many of us, and but to understand that that shiny object may not be the most, um, it may not be the best project for us, right? Or growth for the company or for the employees, and sometimes we may chase a project, could end up exhausting other resources, and there's the opportunity costs that a lot of us don't speak about.
Yeah, and I think Brad too. I mean, like, to say no to revenue coming in the door,
Yeah.
it's like, am I crazy? Why is it? But it's like you're saying no to something so that you can focus on the right thing that will be more of a long term and hopefully, a great fit from all of the different standpoints financially and all of those things to the firm. But it feels uncomfortable, and it feels like you are doing something you should, like saying, because we've had clients, though, I know you've worked with so and so in the past, and you did, but it's not where we focus now. And to say, like, we're not the best resource anymore, it hurts to say, because you're turning something away that is going to bring money in the door. But if we'll focus on what where our true focus is and what we're telling the market, then, that whole position is diluted. So it's like building that muscle to do that and know why you're doing it.
How do you find your clients?
So, I mean, as our industry, the industry we serve, it is a lot of relationships. And we have a lot of clients that have referred us to their project partners and things like that once we start working together. And then I would say the other part of it is we try to do for our clients, or do for ourselves, excuse me, what we do for our clients. So I love to go speak at conferences on these topics. We like to write, guest articles and participate in media interviews, podcasts like this, where you're talking to business leaders about their expertise and how they're growing, is making sure that we are also doing those things so that when a client hears about what we can do for them, they know that we exist and who we are and how to get in touch with us. So I would say it's still a lot of relationships, but also making sure that we are using our skill sets and expertise on ourselves as well. And it really has helped to have both of those, strategies in place.
And I know that you are a huge proponent, of Women's History Month, women firm, women-owned firm. How's that played a role in, just the culture and the branding and, the pursuit?
Well, I would say, don't do business with us because we're a women-owned firm. I have who started this firm. It's just the reality of it.
Yeah.
But I do think it is a little bit of a different dynamic, because one of the things I find, especially when you're attracting talent, is, a lot of our employees, actually right now, all of our employees, it hasn't always been the case, but they're all women and they want to work for a woman. But many of our clients and decision makers and budget owners are men. And so it has been a lot of, important, it's who we are. And it's something I'm really, proud of, to have a team of really capable women to work alongside. But it also involves a lot of, here's how we show up to our clients, because a lot of times they are not women like us. And building that confidence, understanding how to really speak directly and communicate with them in the ways that they communicate, I think has been a big part of it. But it's something we train on and we talk about a lot, to make sure that when we show up and we have a seat at the table, that we are truly a voice in the room. And a lot of our leaders hit on that a lot as well with our younger team members, especially bringing them up to know how to interface with clients, especially in our industry. Because it's not a lot of women sitting around the table all the time.
Which is very admirable. I mean, the female perspective is huge. I have 5 daughters. I think that's absolutely incredible. But even just from the youth side, as you mentioned, as you have younger employees, to be able to trust them to sit on a board or sit in a presentation in a meeting. We spoke earlier in the podcast about how you're preparing your clients, someone such as myself, to public speak or be on a podcast or present but you are actually living this, not just for me on the outsourcing, for a client, but also internally, for your younger staff to breed the confidence in them.
That's right. And I mean, even for your daughters, we say, if your title is an administrative assistant, your job in a meeting is not to take notes. You should ask questions. You should put forward expertise and, be judicious about it. You're not comment on everything, but you're not just a warm body in the room. And I think women, especially if you're sitting around the table with, men who've been in the field for decades, it can feel intimidating, but it's like, you weren't there on accident. You didn't just drop in from the ceiling. So we try to make sure that they're equipped to have a voice, feel confident enough to ask the questions that they have that will help inform our work. But it takes coaching. And I think, again, it's not necessarily like an intuitive skill. And it also takes modeling, seeing other, myself and our other leaders do that is really important, but it's essential. Otherwise, you're going to be like, well, I will try to ask that. I wish I knew that. It's like, well, what have you? You were in the meeting. But it's just, I think it takes a very intentional approach and good coaching and knowing that their questions are valued just as much as mine are. I might have different questions, but it doesn't mean they can't ask theirs.
Yeah, I love that you refer back to the term coach. And one of my previous guests, he said, there's leadership, there's management, there's coaching. And most business owners, most people forget the coaching element. That's such an important part because, you can manage through KPRs and, or KPIs. Sorry, I said KPRs, KPIs and, different tracking metrics and other things. But, at the core of the business, people are people. We're talking about relationships here. And, you're trying to vet them, you're trying to onboard them, you're trying to train them. And then at the same time, instill that confidence that, hey, let's go. And so that coaching part is often missed from business owners.
I agree. And I also feel strongly about, I am not one to think you need to do it my way, but there are frameworks that are successful and you should know what that looks like, so you don't have to say the exact words I would say, and that's not what I'm trying to accomplish. But if here's what we're trying to deliver, here's, a recommendation that might be against what they're thinking right now, and here's how we've seen this be really successful in the past when we have these types of conversations, is empowering them with that language and knowledge. And I really do view that as coaching. It's not, you've got to do it one way or you're fired. This is going to help you be successful in what you're trying to do. Here's how here's the different ways we've seen that happen. But yeah, I think coaching is essential. Otherwise, people don't always know. I mean, they're not going to know what they don't know. Or they might not have seen it before. So they're going to try something and it might not work. And you could help shortcut that by just saying, here's what we do.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, it's so many unique elements. And you mentioned Nashville, it's such a beautiful city. I've been there a couple of times and it's grown so much. I mean, it's changed. You've had people, especially COVID, everyone's moved in. I believe you went to NYU. How does that experience of the big city, that environment, you bring to Nashville, how did that play a role maybe in your confidence, having to get around Manhattan?
Oh, well, it's great. I think anyone who's been to New York, you got to have a thick skin and you see opportunities everywhere. And I try to bring that now, here too. It's like, you never know who you're going to meet, where that relationship is going to go. So don't just blow it off. And I think from a professional standpoint is when I was building early in my career, when I lived in New York, was sort of building the PR expertise that I have today. Local media was Wall Street Journal, New York Times. And it's like, well, now working in a different market, we still have that national and global perspective because a lot of our team members have worked in bigger markets. And, some clients, they do need that. They do want that. They have offices or projects nationally, maybe internationally. And so we need to be thinking at that level. And that was really helpful because there was no other option. There wasn't, the local paper of Manhattan. It was, it is the big papers. So I think that was a big thing. And also just the thick skin, the directness, some of our clients, you got to know how to get to the point. And I was a big skill set in New York. It's like people, they want to know you, but they also want you to get down to business. And that was a really good thing to be exposed to early on.
No, I love that because there's definitely, it's a fast paced area and you have to be able to learn in all aspects of business, you have to be respectful of people's time, not be a time waster, but, be direct. You mentioned that, some of the feedback with some of your team is you're in the meeting, not just did you not take notes, but like, why did you not ask that question? Why did you not pick up on that? And, it's just, there's so much self-awareness that I think is really tough for a lot of us. College background, you're going to learn a lot about, the I don't want to say admin side, but the operational side, right? But then there's the personal side, which really just comes from the school of hard knocks, being out there and communicating and learning and, working with so many new clients and, them challenging you in some ways. Like, hey, Julia, like we need to perform. It's not performing. Then you're having to go back and, figure out then problem solve and diagnose and figure out a different strategy.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes like it's funny because we have all these stories, thinking about storytelling, all these stories that play in our own mind. And one of the things I realized in New York was like, these people don't know I only have 3 or 4 years of experience. They're not linked to my bio. And so
Yeah.
I think we'll tell ourselves like, well, I don't, I'm in this meeting and I'm new, or I'm in this meeting, I only have, everybody's got 2 decades of experience. I've got 5 years. And I don't feel, but a lot of times you don't know that. Like they assume you're in the meeting because you have value and something to
Mhm.
add. So like work from that place, not the place of, oh my gosh, Brad, you've had this podcast for 7 years. And if I thought you had it for a year, would it be different? It's just because I think we tell ourselves like we have to get to this level to feel confident in this space. And it's just not true. And I think I saw that a lot in New York, like young people really sharp, having big roles. And it just was such a different environment, a great place to sort of cut your teeth on the business world, like what things really look like. Yeah.
That's incredible. I mean, being surrounding yourself with like great people and confident people, right? It's just gonna, bleed into you in so many different ways. As you've become an expert in the field of, PR and in our industry specifically, do you feel that there's, things broken in construction design architecture that a lot of people are missing? I mean, how is Pierce working through, call it broken systems, broken operations, broken communication, relationships? I think a lot of us may not be the best communicators at times. So, and
Well,
I'm sure you've seen that.
yeah, I'm not here to call anyone out, but it goes back, you said this earlier of it can be an industry where we've always done it this way. Nobody necessarily thinks of construction and says this is the most innovative space we've ever looked at. I mean, it's just not.
Yeah. Is that true? It's so
And
funny.
at the same time, it is important that you're not thinking from a place of 10 years ago because things are changing. It is a very competitive space. It is the, competition for talent. All of that is a reality. Plus the economic environment we're living in is like, can't just be sitting on your laurels or taking an entirely reactive approach because that's always worked for you. And so I think what we bring that is helpful is a lot of times firms will say, we've got a marketing, department or marketing leaders, but most of the time they're working on RFPs. They're not doing proactive media relationships, speaking opportunities, thought leadership, guest articles on what's coming ahead for the industry. And what we say is like storytelling and building authority is more important than it's ever been. And our clients are telling us that. Like we know we need this now because things have changed so much. We can't say, oh, we've been around for 50 years. Everybody knows. No, it's just that's not the world we're living in now. So I think that's the biggest thing I would say is it's not broken. It's just if you're relying on a mindset of we've always done it this way, it's always worked for us this way, I think that is going to put companies behind so quickly these days. And we've seen it happen for sure. So having a proactive, thoughtful strategy is just critical.
Well, what I love, I mean, especially the PR aspect, and the example I'm going to give is I'm very passionate about the trades. I've grown to love them. I've grown to really appreciate what goes into great design, great architecture, engineering, the vertical construction. There's so many elements, and then the labor is a huge component. And as a builder, it's easy to become known. For example, hey, I need my plumbing fixtures, put in my purchase order, they get shipped to the job site, and I just have to, get them installed, my windows. But I've had the opportunity to go back and see the manufacturing side and see the people that are there and, the thought process and really what goes into the research and development, the R&D, and then the quality and the checks. And you get this emotional attachment of seeing American manufacturing, right? And, in the field, when I see some of these craftsmen building an incredible staircase or doing ironwork and metalwork and welding and having this perfect weld. The thing is, there's so much story behind that. And it's like, I get to see some of this, but I don't think a lot of people, even my clients that are doing some amazing projects, really get to see. I don't want to say don't understand. It's just, they're busy. They have other things, but to see really that hands-on. And that's why it's so important to create a voice. And to your point, broadcast this, because there's so much missed instead of just a nuance of installing a staircase.
Yeah, and don't work from a place of assumption, because those things can be very cool, things to talk about that people connect with. Like, I just didn't know that. And I think that can certainly make a difference, help tell the story, and help really tell somebody like why they should work with you. You appreciate that, you understand it. And I think to your point about the trades, the trades really are, in my mind, I mean, they've always been important, but increasingly important. But this is the stuff that technology is not going to replace, and so making sure that there is, that value is seen and brought forward, I think is really important, because none of that is going away. If only it's going to grow, in my mind. So, it's just such an interesting space to be in.
What keeps you up at night?
I think the biggest thing right now that we're hearing from our clients is just generally like, we've lived in a very interesting kind of unspoken environment. How are we going? Like, what's coming next? And of course, nobody knows that. And we are really advocating for our clients to continue doing what they're doing. Oftentimes, in these periods of uncertainty, it's where, when you have a great sort of PR or proactive sort of just storytelling approach and strategy, you can make the most way. Because a lot of times the response in environments like this is to go quiet. It's like, we don't know what's going to happen. A lot of our clients were bullish coming into the year, getting through tariffs and some of those things. And now it's like, well, there's a lot of other stuff going on, and we're kind of back to this place of uncertainty. And we're still saying to our clients, push forward, because when all these other firms go quiet because they don't know, you're going to be the voice that's heard in the market. And that might be just a thing I would leave too with listeners, is like, these are great times to be thinking about your story, sharing your point of view, because people are also in uncertain times looking for an authoritative voice and for leadership to tell them how to help them make good decisions. And the time is now.
Yeah, that's great. What do you do for fun?
A lot of kid time, got young kids. We're out and about a whole lot. Love to work out, get outside. In Nashville, this is like the sweet spot, because it's before it gets so humid that you can't get out for 11 a.m. without sweating through your clothes. So we're trying to take advantage of all of that. And we've also, I think, been a benefit of growth here has been the food scene. And so I love to go out to eat, try new places, and where we're seeing all these new parts in the city, because it's gotten to a point where our employees will say, "Oh, I was in this neighborhood." I'm like, "I never even heard of that." And I'm like, "Yeah, I worked here forever." So just really trying to embrace all that the change here has brought with it, and get out and, get out away from the computer when we can, and really enjoy the time.
Yeah, I love that. Well, Julie, you've been amazing. I really appreciate you, making time for the audience and sharing your expert and insight. And so for those listening, how could they find you? How do you reach out?
Yeah, come visit us, pierce-pr.com. We've got a quarterly newsletter where we share a lot of insights on some of the topics we talked about today, Brad. And then, of course, please connect with me on LinkedIn. I would love that. Back to our conversation, I try to share things that are going to be valuable to those that I'm connected with, and just be a great resource to people. So would love for you to come find me there too.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Julia.
Thank you, Brad.